Police officer pulls over, speeding car. But when he sees what's in the back seat, he calls for backup. The back seat. A TLW story. Act I, the setting of the soul. There's a stretch of highway between Millbrook and Cedar Falls that doesn't belong to anybody anymore. Used to be farmland, corn and wheat, cattle grazing on either side of a two-lane blacktop that connected small towns to smaller ones. Now, it's just empty. Fields gone to seed, barns sagging like old men. The kind of road that exists because it always has, not because anyone needs it to. I've been patrolling this stretch for 11 years. My name is Marcus Webb. I'm 43 years old, though some mornings I feel older than that. I wear badge number 1847 for the Millbrook County Sheriff's Department, and most days, that badge feels heavier than the belt that holds it. The sun was setting the way it does out here in late September, all orange and purple bleeding across the horizon, turning the wheat fields into an ocean of gold, temperature dropping fast. The kind of evening that makes you think about going home, putting your feet up, maybe having a beer on the porch while the crickets start their symphony. I wasn't thinking about any of that. I was thinking about my daughter, Emma, 16 years old. Same age as the girl I'd found 3 weeks ago in the ditch off Route 47. Same blonde hair, same build. When I pulled that girl from the wreckage, her eyes were still open, staring at nothing, and for just a second, just one terrible second, I thought it was Emma. It wasn't. The girl's name was Rebecca Marsh. Drunk driver crossed the center line doing 80. She died on impact. But in that moment, before I read the license, before I saw the unfamiliar face up close, my whole world stopped. Emma's fine. She's at home right now, probably arguing with her mother about curfew or homework or which college she wants to visit next spring. Normal 16-year-old stuff. The kind of problems you're grateful for. But ever since Rebecca Marsh, I see Emma in every young face on this highway. The radio crackled. Dispatch. Sandy's voice, familiar and bored. Unit 12, you still out on County Road 8? I picked up the handset. Still here, Sandy, just watching the sunset. Must be nice. We've got reports of a speeding vehicle, dark sedan, possibly a late model Honda Accord, heading your direction from Cedar Falls. Last seen doing 70 and a 45. Copy that. I'll keep an eye out. 70 and a 45. Probably some kid running late for dinner, or someone who'd had a few too many at the Cedar Falls Tavern and thought they could make it home before anyone noticed. Most violations out here are simple. Boredom, impatience, the long emptiness of rural highways making people forget there are still rules. I positioned my cruiser in the usual spot, pulled off behind an old billboard advertising a farm supply store that's closed in 2003. From here, I could see about a mile in each direction. The road was empty, just me and the fading light and the sound of wind moving through dry grass. Funny thing about patrol work, people think it's about catching criminals, about high-speed chases and dangerous confrontations. Sometimes it is, but mostly it's about waiting, about watching, about being present in places where nothing happens until suddenly something does. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah, my ex-wife. Emma wants to know if you're coming to her game Friday. Please respond. I typed back, wouldn't miss it. The truth is I've missed 3 of Emma's volleyball games this season. Work, overtime, a domestic disturbance that turned into an all-night standoff. The usual excuses that sound reasonable until you say them out loud to your daughter's face and watch her try not to look disappointed. After the divorce, I promised myself I'd be better, present, available. But this job has a way of taking everything you give it and asking for more. The sun touched the horizon. I thought about Rebecca Marsh again, about how her parents looked when I knocked on their door at 11:47 p.m., about how her mother's knees buckled before I even said the words, about how her father just stood there, frozen, like if he didn't move, didn't speak, didn't breathe, maybe the information wouldn't become real. Every cop carries ghosts. After 11 years, I carry more than I can count. That's when I saw the headlights. Bars. Act 2, the first turning of the trail, 10:22 Walderde. The car came fast, too fast for this road at dusk. Dark blue, maybe black, hard to tell in the failing light. Honda Accord, just like dispatch said. It was doing at least 70, maybe 75, engine whining as it crested the hill about half a mile out. I watched it come. No brake lights, no indication the driver even saw me, even though my cruiser was clearly visible. Some part of me, the part that's been doing this job long enough to recognize patterns, went quiet, focused. A speeder usually slows down when they spot a patrol car, even if they don't see it in time to avoid getting pulled over. It's instinct, self-preservation. But this car didn't change speed at all. I started the engine, pulled onto the highway, hit the lights. The Accord flew past me doing 78. I could see that much on my radar. I accelerated, called it in. Dispatch, Unit 12 in pursuit of that speeding vehicle on County 8. Dark blue Honda Accord, westbound, running 78 in a 55. Copy, Unit 12. Backup is 20 minutes out if you need it. 20 minutes. Out here, you learn to handle things yourself. The Accord's brake lights flashed once, twice, then the car started to slow. Good. Professional. Maybe just someone who wasn't paying attention, didn't realize how fast they were going. It happens. The car pulled onto the shoulder, about a quarter-mile down. Dust rose in the red glow of my lights. I positioned my cruiser at an angle behind it, spotlight on, just like we're trained, create distance, control the space. Every traffic stop is a potential threat until proven otherwise. I sat there for a moment, watching. Running the plates. The Accord sat still. No movement visible through the rear window. No one getting out. No one running. The plates came back clean. Registered to a Daniel Whitmore, 34, Cedar Falls address. No warrants, no priors. Insurance current. Vehicle inspection up to date. Everything normal, except nothing felt normal. I've done thousands of traffic stops. After a while, you develop an instinct, a feeling in your gut that tells you when something's wrong before your brain catches up. Some cops ignore it. Some cops get killed ignoring it. I never ignore it. I stepped out of the cruiser, hand resting on my service weapon, not gripping it, just aware of where it was. I approached the driver's side from the rear, staying in the blind spot, eyes on the car, on the windows, on any movement. The driver's window rolled down before I reached it. A man's face appeared, mid-30s like the registration said. Dark hair, wearing a button-down shirt, tie loosened. He looked tired, stressed. His hands were on the steering wheel at 10 and 2, exactly where they should be. "Evening," I said. "License and registration, please." "Officer, His voice cracked. He cleared his throat. "I'm sorry, I know I was speeding." "License and registration," I repeated. He reached slowly for the glove compartment, no sudden movements, pulled out the registration, then his wallet from his pocket, handed them both to me through the window. Daniel James Whitmore. Born March 15th, 1991. The photo on the license looked like him, maybe a few years younger before the lines around his eyes. "Mr. Whitmore," I said, "do you know how fast you were going?" "Too fast." He was gripping the steering wheel again, knuckles white. "I'm sorry, I need to get home. It's important." "It's always important," I said. "But doing 78 on this road, at dusk, that's a good way to make sure you don't get home at all." He nodded, didn't argue. His eyes kept flicking to the rearview mirror. Not looking at me. Looking behind him. Into the back seat. "You alone in the vehicle, Mr. Whitmore?" A pause, just a fraction of a second too long. "No," he said quietly. "No, I'm not alone." I took a step back, changed my angle so I could see into the rear of the car. The back seat was dark, shadows pooling in the failing light. But I could see something there, a shape, small, covered with a blanket. "Who's in the back seat, Mr. Whitmore?" He closed his eyes. His jaw tightened. When he opened them again, I saw something in his expression I recognized because I'd felt it myself 1,000 times. Fear. "Officer," he said, "I need you to understand something. I'm not a criminal. I'm not running from anything. But what's in that back seat? It's complicated. Step out of the vehicle, please." "Officer, step out of the vehicle, now." He complied, opened the door slowly, stepped onto the shoulder, hands visible, no sudden movements. He was shaking. I positioned him by the front of his car, in my spotlight, where I could see him clearly. "Stay there, don't move." I approached the rear passenger door, hand on my weapon now, not drawn, but ready. Through the window, I could see the blanket more clearly. It was moving, slightly, rhythmically. Someone was breathing under there. "Mr. Whitmore," I said, keeping my voice calm, professional, "I need you to tell me who's under that blanket." He turned to face me, tears on his cheeks now, catching the red and blue lights from my cruiser. "My son," he said. "His name is Ethan. He's 8 years old." I reached for the door handle. "Officer, wait," Whitmore said, voice rising. "Please, just wait. Let me explain." But I was already opening the door, already pulling back the blanket. What I saw made my blood go cold. Propulstus Act 3, The Hard Miles, 22-36. The boy was small, too small for 8 years old. He was curled on his side, arms wrapped around his knees, and even in the dim light, I could see the bruises. Dark purple marks on his arms, on his legs, one on his neck that looked like someone's thumbprint. His face was pale, lips slightly blue, eyes half closed and glassy. "Jesus," I whispered. "I've seen child abuse before. Every cop has. It's the part of the job that stays with you, that follows you home, that makes you hold your own kids a little tighter at night. But seeing it never gets easier." "Ethan," I said softly. "Ethan, can you hear me?" The boy's eyes moved, focused on me with difficulty. He tried to speak, but only a small sound came out. I turned to Whitmore. My hand went to my weapon. "On the ground. Now, hands behind your head." "Officer, please. On the ground." He dropped to his knees, then onto his stomach, hands clasped behind his head. He was sobbing now, full-body sobs that shook his frame. I called it in. "Dispatch, Unit 12. I need an ambulance and immediate backup on County Road 8, mile marker 14. I have a child victim, possible abuse, suspect in custody." Sandy's voice came back. All business now. "Copy, Unit 12. Ambulance is en route. ETA 12 minutes. Additional units responding." 12 minutes. Out here, that might as well be an hour. I kept one eye on Whitmore, face down in the dirt, still crying. With my other hand, I carefully touched the boy's forehead. He was burning up. Fever. His breathing was shallow, raspy. "Ethan," I said, "help is coming, okay? You're going to be all right." His eyes found mine. He tried to speak again. "This time," words came out, barely a whisper. "Dad didn't hurt me." I froze. "What? Dad didn't..." The boy's eyes rolled back. His body went limp. "Ethan," I checked his pulse. Weak, but there. His breathing was getting worse. 12 minutes was too long. I grabbed my radio. "Dispatch, upgrade to emergency. Child is unresponsive. Difficulty breathing. We need that ambulance now." "Copy, Unit 12. They're en route, going as fast as they can." From the ground, Whitmore's voice came, hoarse and desperate. "Is he breathing? Officer, please. Is he breathing?" "Stay down," I ordered. "Please!" Whitmore's voice cracked. "You have to help him. He needs his medication. In the glove compartment. Blue inhaler. He has asthma, severe asthma, and his mother..." He stopped, broke down again. I hesitated. Looked at the child, at the bruises, at the pale lips. At Whitmore, face in the dirt, weeping. Something wasn't adding up. "Mr. Whitmore," I said carefully, "I need you to explain, now. All of it." He lifted his head slightly, eyes red, face streaked with dust and tears. "My ex-wife," he said. "Melissa, she's been hurting him for months. I didn't know how bad it was until 2 days ago when I picked him up for my weekend visit. She sent him out wearing long sleeves even though it was 80 degrees. When I asked him about it, he wouldn't say anything. But that night, when he was sleeping, I saw the bruises, all of them." I glanced at the boy, still unresponsive, still breathing, but barely. "I confronted her yesterday," Whitmore continued. "Told her I was taking Ethan to the doctor, getting it documented, calling CPS. She laughed at me, said no one would believe me, said she'd tell them I was the one hurting him, that I was trying to take him away from her, said she'd make sure I never saw him again." His voice dropped to almost nothing. "Then this morning, she called, said Ethan had an accident, fell down the stairs, said he was having trouble breathing, but she couldn't take him to the hospital because they'd ask questions. She told me if I said anything to anyone, she'd disappear with him. Said I'd never find them." I felt cold. "I drove straight there," Whitmore said. "She met me at the door, handed him to me wrapped in that blanket, told me to take him somewhere far away, get him help, but never mention her name. Then she closed the door. He looked up at me, eyes pleading. I'm not kidnapping him, officer. I'm trying to save him. I know I should have called 911 immediately, but I was scared. Scared they wouldn't believe me. Scared she'd convince them I did this. Scared that by the time anyone sorted it out, it would be too late. So I drove. I was trying to get to Millbrook General, trying to think of what to say, how to explain without getting him taken away from me again. And then I saw your lights. I looked at the boy, at the bruises, at the fever, at the blue lips. Then I ran to my cruiser and grabbed my first aid kit. Sometimes the law is clear, black and white, right and wrong, and sometimes you're standing on a dark highway with a dying child and a father's desperate story, and you have to make a choice based on nothing but instinct and faith. I returned to the back seat, opened the glove compartment, found the blue inhaler, shook it, pressed it to Ethan's lips. 1 puff, 2. His chest rose slightly. The wheeze in his breathing eased, just a fraction. I looked at Whitmore, still on the ground. Stay there, I said. Then, more softly, your son's breathing. He's stable, for now. Whitmore's sob of relief was almost inhuman. I got back on the radio. Dispatch, update. Situation is more complex than initially reported. I'm securing the scene. Need child services and a detective on scene when possible. And tell that ambulance to step on it. In the distance, I could hear sirens. Help was coming. But I was thinking about Emma, about how I'd feel if someone was hurting her, about what I'd do, how far I'd go, about how sometimes the right thing and the legal thing aren't the same thing, and about how, in 11 years of wearing this badge, I'd never felt further from certainty than I did right now, standing in the gathering dark, trying to save a boy whose story I didn't fully understand, but desperately wanted to believe. Axed off The Reckoning of Truth, 36 de Ferry-Surin. The ambulance arrived first. 2 paramedics, Rodriguez and Chen, both people I'd worked with before. They moved fast, professional, checking vitals, starting an IV, loading the boy onto a stretcher while I gave them what information I had. Asthma attack, possible abuse, fever, unconscious for approximately 4 minutes. Administered 2 puffs from his rescue inhaler, I rattled off. He's been in and out. Rodriguez nodded, already working, while Chen prepared the oxygen. Within 90 seconds, they had Ethan in the ambulance. We're taking him to Millbrook General, Rodriguez said. You want to ride along? I looked at Whitmore, still on the ground, face turned toward the ambulance, watching his son disappear inside. No, I said. I have to stay here, but keep me updated. Will do. The ambulance pulled away, lights flashing, sirens splitting the night. Backup arrived 3 minutes later. Deputy Hernandez, 26 years old, 2 years on the job, good kid, but still learning. He stepped out of his cruiser, hand on his weapon, assessing the scene. Webb, he said. What have we got? I looked at Whitmore, made a decision. Help me get him up. Hernandez hesitated. You sure? Dispatch said possible child abuse. I know what dispatch said. Help me get him up. We pulled Whitmore to his feet. His legs barely held him. I guided him to my cruiser, sat him in the back. Seat. Door open. Talk to me, I said. Everything. From the beginning. So he did. Daniel Whitmore was a high school history teacher in Cedar Falls, married Melissa Chen in 2015. Ethan was born the following year. For the first few years, everything was fine, normal. Then Melissa lost her job at the bank. Stress mounted. She started drinking. Small arguments became big ones became violent ones. She never hit me, Whitmore said quietly. Just threw things, broke dishes, screamed. I thought it was just the stress, that once she found another job, things would calm down. But they didn't. They got worse. They divorced in 2023. Shared custody, 50-50. Whitmore kept the house in Cedar Falls. Melissa moved to an apartment on the other side of town. At first, Ethan seemed okay with it, Whitmore continued. Kids are resilient, right? That's what everyone says. But last spring he started getting quieter. Wouldn't talk about his time at his mom's place. Started having nightmares. I asked him if everything was okay, and he'd just nod, say he was fine. Then came the bruises. First one appeared in June, small mark on Ethan's upper arm. Melissa said he'd fallen off his bike. The next one came in July, bruise on his shin. She said he'd bumped into a table. August brought another, and another. I wanted to believe her, Whitmore said. You have to understand. I wanted to believe it was all just accidents, bad luck. But then 2 weeks ago, Ethan had a massive asthma attack in the middle of the night while he was with me. When I was helping him with his inhaler, his shirt rode up, and I saw them. Dozens of bruises, all over his torso, different stages of healing, fingerprint marks on his ribs. He buried his face in his hands. I took photos, documented everything, called my lawyer Monday morning. She said we needed to file an emergency custody motion, get CPS involved, but that it could take days, maybe weeks. And in the meantime, Ethan was scheduled to go back to Melissa's on Tuesday. Tuesday was yesterday. I tried to stop it, Whitmore said. Told the custody exchange supervisor I had concerns. She said without official reports her hands were tied. So I watched my son get in the car with his mother, knowing she was hurting him, and I couldn't do anything about it. He looked up at me. When she called this morning, when she said he'd fallen, that he couldn't breathe right, that she couldn't take him to the hospital, I knew this was it. This was her trying to cover up whatever she'd done. And I knew if I called 911, if I went through the proper channels, there'd be questions and reports and investigations, and Ethan would die while we were all following procedure. Hernandez had been listening, standing a few feet away. Now he spoke up. Webb, we need to bring the mother in. If what he's saying is true. It is true, I said. Hernandez blinked. How do you know? Because I've seen this before, different details, same story. And because I'm looking at a man who's terrified and desperate, not a man who's lying. But I'd been wrong before. Every cop has. People lie, people hide, people hurt their children and then blame everyone else. I pulled out my phone, called dispatch. Sandy, I need you to run a welfare check on a Melissa Whitmore, Cedar Falls. Send the address to my phone. Also pull any prior reports, CPS calls, anything related to that address or that name. Copy. Give me a few minutes. Those few minutes felt like hours. Whitmore sat in my cruiser, head down, hands shaking. Hernandez stood by his vehicle, uncertain. I paced the shoulder, watching the last light drain from the sky, thinking about Emma, about Rebecca Marsh, about all the times I'd stood at a crossroads like this, trying to figure out which path led to justice and which led to more pain. My phone buzzed. Text from Sandy with Melissa Whitmore's address. Then a follow-up message. 3 CPS calls in past 18 months. All investigated, all closed as unfounded. Last one was 2 months ago. Caller was anonymous, reported suspected child abuse. Investigator found no evidence. My stomach dropped. I called the station. Asked for Detective Sarah Brennan. She'd worked child abuse cases for 15 years. If anyone could make sense of this, it was her. She answered on the second ring. Webb, what's going on? I told her everything. The traffic stop, the boy, the bruises, Whitmore's story, the CPS reports. When I finished, there was a long silence. 3 investigations and they all came back clean, she said finally. That's what dispatch says. Webb, you know what that means. Either the investigators missed something or the mother's been smart about it, coached the kid, hidden the evidence, made everyone think the father's paranoid or vindictive. Or the father actually is hurting the kid and this is all a setup. I looked at Whitmore, thought about the fear in his eyes, the desperation, the way he'd beg me to help his son. No, I said, I don't think so. Your gut? My gut. Brennan sighed. All right, I'm heading to Melissa Whitmore's address now. I'll knock on the door, see what she has to say. In the meantime, don't let Daniel Whitmore go anywhere. We need his statement officially. And Webb? Yeah? Be careful. These cases, they get messy. She hung up. I walked back to my cruiser, sat in the front seat, Whitmore still in the back, separated by the mesh divider. Detective's on her way to talk to your ex-wife, I said, and you're going to need to come to the station, give a full statement. Am I under arrest? No, not yet, but if your story doesn't check out, it will, he said quietly. It will check out, because I'm telling the truth. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him. But I've learned that wanting something doesn't make it true. We sat in silence, waiting. The radio crackled periodically with routine traffic. A fender bender on Route 9. A noise complaint in town. The mundane rhythm of police work continuing around us while we existed in this pocket of uncertainty. My phone rang. "Brennan." "Webb," she said. "I'm at the Whitmore residence. Melissa isn't here. Neighbor says she saw her leave about 3 hours ago with 2 suitcases." My blood went cold. "She ran," I said. "Looks like it. I've got a bolo out now. And Webb, I checked inside through the window. There's blood on the living room carpet. Not a lot, but enough." I closed my eyes. "I'm calling the hospital," Brennan continued, "getting a full medical workup on the boy. If the injuries match the father's story, we'll know." She hung up. I sat there, engine idling, lights still flashing, and thought about how close Daniel Whitmore had come to being arrested for trying to save his son's life. About how the system that's supposed to protect children had failed this one 3 separate times. About how, if Whitmore hadn't been speeding, if I hadn't pulled him over, if he'd made it to the hospital on his own, maybe no one would have believed him there either. Sometimes justice is just luck, being in the right place at the right time, having someone see the truth when everyone else sees what they expect to see. I turned around to face Whitmore. "Your son's going to be okay," I said, "and we're going to find your ex-wife." He nodded, didn't speak. Just cried silently in the backseat of my cruiser while the stars came out overhead and the highway stretched empty in both directions. Act 5. The Trail Behind Us. 50 Zarit 60 Zeros. They found Melissa Whitmore 6 hours later at a motel outside of Pittsburgh. She was arrested without incident. Didn't say anything. Didn't ask about Ethan. Just sat in the back of the patrol car with the same blank expression she probably wore every time she hurt her son. The medical examination told the story, her silence wouldn't. Ethan had 17 distinct bruises in various stages of healing, 3 cracked ribs, a partially collapsed lung from blunt force trauma to the chest. The fall down the stairs that morning had actually been Melissa slamming him against a wall after he'd spilled juice on her laptop. He was 8 years old. The CPS investigations that had cleared her, she'd coached Ethan before each visit, told him exactly what to say, threatened him with worse if he told the truth, cleaned the house, put on makeup to cover her own bruises from drinking-induced falls, played the role of concerned mother so well that experienced investigators had seen nothing wrong. Some people are good at hiding monsters. Some monsters are good at hiding themselves. Daniel Whitmore never left his son's bedside at Millbrook General. I went to visit 3 days after the traffic stop. Ethan was awake by then, breathing easier, color returning to his face. Still small, still fragile, but alive. Whitmore looked up when I entered the room, stood, extended his hand. "Officer Webb," he said. "Thank you. I don't know how to... if you hadn't..." "You don't need to thank me," I said. "You saved him. You did that. I got out of the way." We stood there in the fluorescent light of the hospital room, 2 men who'd met under terrible circumstances, connected now by the weight of what had almost happened and what didn't. "They're dropping any charges against you," I said. "Reckless driving, everything. And Melissa's lawyer is already talking about a plea deal, but the DA says she's looking at serious time." "Good," Whitmore said. There was no satisfaction in his voice, just exhaustion. "She needs help. Professional help. Prison, hospital, whatever. She's sick, I know that. But Ethan..." He looked at his son, sleeping peacefully for the first time in months. "Ethan needed to be safe. That's all that mattered." I nodded. "There's going to be investigations," I said. "CPS is reviewing all their old cases involving your family. The investigators who cleared her 3 times are facing serious questions. It's going to be messy. I know. But you'll have full custody. Emergency order came through this morning. When Ethan's ready to go home, he'll go home with you." Whitmore's face crumpled. Relief, grief, exhaustion, hope, all of it at once. He sat down heavily in the chair beside Ethan's bed. "I failed him," he said quietly. "For months, I knew something was wrong, and I should have..." "You did everything you could," I said. "The system failed him, not you." But I understood what he meant. The guilt that comes with feeling like you could have done more, should have seen it sooner, should have fought harder. That guilt doesn't listen to logic. I carry my own version of it. Different details, same weight. "Officer Webb," a small voice from the bed. Ethan was awake, His eyes clearer now than they'd been that night on the highway, looked up at me. "Yes, Ethan? Thank you for helping my dad find me." The way he phrased it, find me, like he'd been lost. Maybe he had been. Lost in a place where no one was looking, where everyone had decided he was fine because the alternative was too terrible to consider. "You're welcome," I said. I stayed for a few more minutes, made small talk, asked Ethan about school, about what he wanted to be when he grew up, astronaut apparently, which made sense for a kid who'd learned early that escape was sometimes the only option. Then I left them there, father and son, together, safe. I drove back to Millbrook in the early afternoon. The same stretch of highway where this had all started looked different in daylight. The wheat fields were golden again. The barns still sagged, but somehow less sad. The road was just a road. I thought about Daniel Whitmore doing 78 on this highway, terrified and desperate, his dying son in the back seat, racing toward a hope he wasn't even sure existed. I thought about how close I'd come to arresting him, to calling it in as a kidnapping, to making everything worse because I'd seen what I expected to see instead of what was really there. And I thought about all the Daniel Whitmores I'd never pulled over, all the kids like Ethan I'd never found, all the Melissa Whitmores who were smart enough to hide the evidence, manipulate the system, hurt their children in ways that left no visible marks. Some roads don't lead anywhere. They just teach you something on the way. What this road taught me is that certainty is a luxury, that the law is a framework, not a truth, that sometimes you have to trust your gut even when your gut could be wrong, and that every life you save comes with the knowledge of all the lives you didn't. I made it to Emma's volleyball game that Friday, sat in the bleachers with Sarah, my ex-wife, both of us cheering when Emma served an ace, both of us cringing when she missed a dig. Normal parent stuff. During halftime, Emma came over, sweaty, grinning, 16 years old, and invincible in the way only teenagers can be. "You made it," she said. "I made it," I agreed. "Good, because I've been working on my serve, and I wanted you to see it." I hugged her, held on maybe a second longer than usual. "What's wrong?" she asked, pulling back. "Nothing," I said. "Nothing's wrong. I'm just glad you're here." She gave me a look, the one that said she didn't quite believe me, but wasn't going to push it. Anne ran back to her team. Sarah glanced at me. "Rough week?" "Yeah," I said. "Rough week." But I was there, present, available, watching my daughter play volleyball in a warm gym on a Friday night, while somewhere, in a hospital room, another father was holding his son and being grateful for the same thing I was, a second chance to do better. The sun sets the same way every night on County Road 8, orange and purple bleeding across the horizon, turning the wheat fields into an ocean of gold, temperature dropping, crickets starting their symphony. I still patrol this stretch, still pull over speeders, still watch the highway for signs of trouble. But now, sometimes, when I see headlights coming too fast in the gathering dark, I think about Daniel Whitmore, about Ethan, about how the difference between a criminal and a hero can sometimes be as simple as someone taking the time to listen. Some roads remember what we try to forget. This one remembers a father who broke the law to save his son's life, and it remembers the cop who almost stopped him. Funny how the land remembers what we try to forget. There's a quiet between storms that tells you who you really are. And in that quiet, on that highway, on that September evening, I learned that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is admit you don't have all the answers, and choose to believe in someone anyway. Every man breaks, some just learn to stand up slower. Daniel Whitmore stood up, and so did his son. And somewhere on a dark highway between Millbrook and Cedar Falls, in the space where certainty ends and faith begins, that's enough. That has to be enough.